A significant change from his early days in office, President Joe Biden is endorsing harsher border measures, such as closing the U.S.-Mexico border in an effort to counter attacks on immigration policy made by former President Donald Trump in the run-up to the election. Biden delivered this message to House Republicans just hours after House Speaker Mike Johnson warned that the proposed border agreement in the Senate is dead on arrival. Securing the border through these negotiations is a win for America, Biden said. This is how those calling for more stringent border controls should go about getting it. Pass a bipartisan bill that I will sign if you're serious about solving the border situation. When Biden began office, he promised to operate the border in a humane manner and to reinstate asylum. Republicans have taken advantage of this political weakness, as his administration has had to deal with the difficult realities and difficulties at the U.S.-Mexico border in the midst of unprecedented migration throughout the Western Hemisphere. In an effort to raise money for his November campaign, Trump has been pressuring Republicans to vote against the carefully crafted border deal in the Senate in recent weeks. Throughout his presidency, Biden has relied on stricter policies to try to stop the immigration wave, but his remarks on Friday showed a more assertive approach as the president attempts to manage a problem that has troubled him and runs the danger of alienating some supporters. As president, the deal would grant me further emergency powers to close the border in the event of a crisis. And the day I sign the bill into law, I will exercise that authority if granted it, Biden stated in his statement. Biden's endorsement of a power that would enable him to close the border in the case of a spike in immigration was surprising to both immigration advocates and current and former government officials. Johnson criticized Biden on Saturday for supporting the proposed border agreement, claiming the president can impose administrative action to stop migrant crossings without the consent of Congress. Additionally, Johnson asserted in his initial remarks regarding the Senate agreement that it would compel the U.S. to cede control to illegal immigration. Reports state that before any new shutdown authority could be invoked, the Senate's currently pending measure would expressly allow as many as 150,000 illegal crossings per month, 1.8 million annually. America will have already been given up by then, according to Johnson's declaration. Johnson, according to a person with knowledge of the Senate agreement, is interpreting the idea incorrectly. According to the source, federal authorities will have to severely curtail illegal border crossings until the U.S. witnesses fewer than 2,000 migrants approach the border daily over a 2-week period, or until border crossings become so high that the Department of Homeland Security is forced to implement emergency measures. The soon-to-be-released plan would give the Department of Homeland Security new emergency powers to close the border if the average number of illegal migrants crossing each day reaches 4,000 over the course of a week. If it could be shown that certain migrants were escaping torture or persecution back home, they would be permitted to remain. The specifics are still unknown. However, the power reminds officials of a COVID-era border limitation that Trump used in 2020, allowing them to deny entry to migrants at the border. It made border crossing more common and continued to put pressure on the immigration system. Both current and past Homeland Security officers have expressed concern about the agreement and questioned the legitimacy of the power to close the border. Even though Trump tried several times to seal the border to asylum seekers while he was president, the law as it stands now makes it impossible. Biden's Friday comments, according to a former Biden aide, made sense politically to put down a marker now that Johnson said no. Authorities fear that the new emergency power will cause them the same problems as Title 42, a restriction from the COVID period. Trump used Title 42, a public health authority, to give authorities the power to send migrants they found at the U.S.-Mexico border back to Mexico or their place of origin during the pandemic. Thousands of migrants gathered in northern Mexico to wait to cross, but authorities continue to struggle with an excessive number of border crossings. In addition to dealing with an increase in repeat crossers during the time when Title 42 was in effect, officials also had to deal with a lack of support from Mexico, where thousands of migrants were being forced back. Advocates for immigrants swiftly criticized Biden for his remarks, exposing the widening divide between the president and the advocacy group.